what do you call it? The practice round. We have a hard time getting that on time. But here, we start right at 6:15. Yeah, that's right. Got people at home. Okay. Yeah, it looks like we had a sound issue the practice round, but I mean, well, that's why we do it. So clarify.
I'm gonna listen to it, and I forget.
Uh,
I keep
we
forgetting. I keep.
we have fun. We guess the ages of movies today, not even people. So.
Yeah, 18.
Oh no, you're way behind.
I don't remember. I was here last week, but I don't remember.
We are all the way in chapter 20. We have made it chapter 20.
Have you started?
I even remember I was
Starting it tonight.
Oh, how exciting.
Yep.
You do or don't?
Because I have, let's see,
Remember yesterday?
for those of you who are at home, for the listening audience at home, and for those of you who are in the room, 1, 2, 3. Oh, so if you count tonight, we have 5 weeks left before we take our summer break. So we have 5 weeks to get through 2 chapters. I think we can pull that off. Although tonight is going to be at a snail's pace because we're going to do a little. How about this? We're going to do a theological doctrinal overview. Now that'll get y'all.
You expect me to come in here?
Oh yeah, that'll get people excited at home. All right, before we get there, as we're letting people get in, because I don't see any eyes on there. Oh, in fact, I hadn't pulled it up on mine. I meant to.
What happened to our main man? Maybe he's outside somewhere.
Let me try to pull this up here real
He
quick.
could have gone home and gotten to bed.
Yes, I have not seen him here this evening. He may have had something going on.
He might be doing, you think he's doing the Sleep in Heavenly Peace thing? That big build they were doing?
He did not go to that. That was in Charlotte, I believe, and he did not attend that. But he might be unloading some stuff from it. They've made their way back now, and
You say where you are.
yeah, I can't pull this up. Okay, let's see. I don't need to see that right now. Okay, there we are. Turn sound down. Okay. Well, appreciate y'all being here as we're letting a few more people hop on online. Got a few things to talk about this date. Anybody have any birthdays you want to throw out there? Anybody have a birthday today that y'all want to shout out to? Anyone?
I know we had a birthday sometime.
We did have a birthday sometime.
And, it hasn't approached me
Yours in
anymore.
July.
Well, I've got a few, but none of these birthdays, maybe one of them, will y'all probably know right off the bat. So, we'll see if we're going to... So, in other words, it's kind of a slow news day, to be honest with you. But, so, I've got 5 birthdays I'm going to share real quick. And so, the first one, in 1711, is happy birthday to David Hume. For those of you who like philosophy, there was some theology thrown in there as well. But if you like philosophy, he was a Scottish philosopher, born in Scotland, and in 1711 died in 1776. So if you studied philosophy, you've studied David Hume. On this date in 1833, happy birthday to Johannes, Brahms, the German composer and conductor. I did a little bit of, but he was born in Hamburg, Germany. This date in 1833, died in 1897, and so I almost didn't put him in, but since the next one was also born on this date, I thought it was interesting. 7 years later, in 1840, Tchaikovsky was born. He was a Russian composer, best known for
Music. No music?
Yeah.
The Nutcracker. There you go. Yep. Born on this date in Russia, died in 1893. Now, the one person you may know out of this group of 5, without me having to make any explanation, would be on this date in 1901, Gary Cooper was born. Born in Helena, Montana. Died in 1961. I didn't realize he had been gone that long, but died before I was born. I did not know that. And then On this date in 1909, you're probably not familiar with the name as much as you are what he's known for. But on this date in 1909, Edwin Land was born. He was an American inventor of instant photography, and he was the co-founder of Polaroid Corporation. He was born in Bridgeport, Connecticut, died in 1991. Got 2 deaths to share with you. One of them, we will have a little trivia input from you. It was on this date in 2002 that, goodness, I didn't even write his, hold on. I've got to look this up in front of everyone because I did not write. Hey, welcome.
Hey,
Glad you made it. Okay.
you're gonna love it, Jerry.
Oh, it was on this date.
You're gonna love it.
It was on this date in 2002 that Seattle Slew died.
Who was that?
Seattle Slew was
Ball player?
what now?
Ball player?
No, Seattle Slew was a horse race, a racehorse,
Oh.
and won the Triple Crown. He was one of a select few who have won the Triple Crown. Can anybody tell me how many? And by the way, he won it in 1977. How many Triple Crown winners have there been? That's the
10?
got 10? 4? A little bit more than that. There have been 13 Triple Crown winners, and Seattle Slew was one of them. He won it in 77, but he just died in 2002 at the age of 28.
Wow.
And then I kind of made reference to this. This is so funny that some of you are sitting in here because we were talking about televangelists the other day. It was on this date, just 4 years ago, 2021, that Ernest Angley died. He was the televangelist, and of course, he was into all the crazy stuff. But he died. He was actually 99 years old when he died.
Wow.
A few events on this date. In 1718, the city of New Orleans was founded by a French explorer. So that was cool. 1867, Swedish chemist Alfred Nobel patents dynamite in England. And in fact, it was one of 3 patents that he had on that explosive. So of course, that led to him seeking out he didn't invent that in order to be used in warfare, but when he saw all the damage that it did, that's when he decided he would set up a foundation for those who were peaceful, and that's where the Nobel Peace Prize came from. Is on this date in 1914, ladies, since y'all are in here, this date in 1914 that the U.S. Congress established Mother's Day here in America. So, thank you all. Okay, to me, I thought this was interesting again because I love outer space. It was on this date in 1925 that the first projection planetarium opened. And opened in Munich, Germany. Yeah, oddly enough. But yeah, this date in 1925. Okay. Here's another trivia for you. It was on this date in 1941 that the first record to be designated as gold was released. Anybody have a guess as to what that record was? First record to be, so this is
Already
trivia.
got it.
What now?
Already got it.
Oh, you already know?
Yeah.
Oh, you already looked it up? You're not supposed to be looking this stuff up. Oh my goodness.
Tell me the answer. That's what I want to know.
Chattanooga Choo Choo by Glenn Miller.
There you go. Chattanooga Choo Choo. First record designated as gold. But it was released on this date, 1941. Also, 1945, Branch Rickey announces the formation of the Negro Baseball League. So that was a step forward for African Americans in this country. And of course, then that was abolished, and they were allowed to come into the National Baseball League. 1945, on this date, the unconditional surrender of Germans to the Allies in northern France. So that was good, ending World War II. And then on this date in 2020, I guess kind of local for those of us who are in the room at least, and maybe for some of those of you who are watching. So on this date in 2020 that Ahmaud Arbery's killers, the father and son duo, they were arrested in Brunswick on this date in 2020. All right. All right. Good to have y'all in here. Good to have y'all watching. Thank y'all for joining with us. Want to encourage you to turn in your Bibles to Revelation chapter 20. We have made it through 19 whole chapters. Took us almost 2 years to do that. So, let us continue in our study of the book of Revelation. Yes.
Let me ask you a quick question. What
Okay.
version of the Bible do you typically use?
I use the New American Standard Bible.
Thank you.
That's the one that I use. I don't have a problem with people who use others, but that's just the one that I use. Very quick story about that. When I was in 10th grade, I knew what God had called me to do. He'd called me to do this. And so I'm thankful for that I didn't have to wonder. I didn't go through college wondering and all that kind of stuff. I've known for a long time. And when I was in 10th grade, my Bible was tearing apart, kind of like this one is. I mean, I had pages coming out of the Bible.
Oh, wow.
And, of course, this one's in worse shape than that one was. At least I only had one or two sections there, but the beginning and the end of mine are coming out. But anyway, it was a King James. I grew up on King James, so I don't have a problem in the world with King James. But I thought, if I'm gonna make a change in what translation I use, now would be the time to do that. And so I started looking into different translations and that kind of stuff. And at that time, I had not taken Greek or Hebrew, and I still have never taken Aramaic. And so I wanted the most literal translation possible. And so I kind of made a deal with God, and I don't think it was a bad deal to make with God. I said, if you'll lead me to the translation that tells me what it says, I will do my best to study to figure out what it means. So I wanted the most literal translation that was readable. And as much as, where do I turn to for that? As much as a 10th grader is going to know how to look into that, I did. And I became convinced that the New American Standard was the one to use. And that was 40 years ago, something like that, maybe a little over 40 years, something. In that time, I have taken Hebrew and I have taken Greek, and I've studied a whole lot more into translations and where they came from and all that. And I am still convinced to this day that it does the best job of literally interpreting what as close as we can come to the originals, what they literally mean. And so that's what I stick with. Now, I'm not a Nazi about that. I would, if there was a better translation that came out that was more readable or whatever, but stayed strictly to what it said, I'd switch to it. It'd be fine. And there are others that are out there that are great at it. But I just think the New American Standard is the best one. So that's what I use. Other people have different convictions, and I'm okay with that. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. All right. Okay. Revelation chapter 20. We are getting into a new phase of history, because we have now gone through the horrible events of the tribulation. In fact, theologically speaking, Revelation has covered everything that it intended to throughout all of history, through all of known history. Because remember, chapter 1 and verse 19 gives us the outline for the book, which is the outline of history. Write down the things which were, and the things which are, and the things which are to take place, which will take place. That's Revelation 1:19. And so the things which were is chapter 1, and he wrote those things down. The things which are Revelation chapters 2 and 3, which is which is in the present day of John. And the things which are to come are the future events that will take place even still in our future. and that is the events of the tribulation. And so we've worked through all of that. And now we're coming to a new phase of history that we know of as the millennium. Now, I told you at the get-go, from the get-go, that we are going to do a theological doctrinal overview. And that sounds highfalutin. But it's really not. At least if it is on the other side, if it is on the other side of this, that means I didn't do a very good job of teaching, which is very possible. I mean, I've fallen flat on my face many, many times before. But I'm going to do my best to try to make this understandable so that when we get to the other side of it, you can say, you know what? We did a theological doctrinal overview, and you can talk about it like you know exactly what you're talking about, because hopefully you will. That's what we hope for. So you can take out your pen and paper if you want to, and that will be fine. But you don't have to. You got this video that you'll be able to save if you so choose. It'll be on our It'll be on our archives for however long that lasts. So here's what the overview is going to consist of, and I've got a whiteboard, and so I don't really plan on using this, but if I'm looking up there correctly, if I'm looking at it right, yeah, y'all should be able to see this. I might have to make an adjustment there, because again, I didn't really plan to do this until just a few minutes really before we got started, but I think it'll be valuable for us to understand. Yeah, okay, so I'm seeing this. I'll just work on this side. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so there are different views of the millennium. And I think that this matters, especially if you ever discuss this ever again with anyone else, and you're trying to figure out where they're coming from or why they are talking about something differently than the way that I talk about it. And hopefully you'll at least, even if you're not convinced, even if they convince you to believe something different, at least you'll understand why I come to the conclusions that I do. Okay? So there are three primary, and we've talked about these, by the way. We've talked about these. You know, I bet on the thing up there it's kind of hard because I've got white shirt on white background. That's not really good for cameras, but anyway. So we've talked about these in other settings, and yeah, but this matters a great deal. So there are three primary views of the millennium. I think we actually maybe have talked about these at the beginning of this study, but that was 2 years ago, so you don't remember that, right? All right, three of them. Post, and So, you have premillennialism, postmillennialism, and amillennialism. Now, that sounds highfalutin. Those are big words. You can take them to Sunday school class this Sunday. Just throw them out there. Nobody's going to know if you're saying it right or not. And do your best to spell millennialism, because I can't ever remember if it's two N's and two L's or one of them. I don't know. Just write it down however you can figure it out. Okay? So, we'll just put M. There we go. All right? So, that's cheating. All right. Premillennialism, postmillennialism, amillennialism. And it's just as you know prefixes from grade school, that's what's going to apply here. Pre means before, post means after, and means not. Like someone who is amoral, that means they don't have any morals. Okay? Something that is atypical is not typical. It is the opposite of. So that gives us a pretty good understanding of what these mean. So a premillennialist is one who believes the way that I have been teaching this entire time. And that is, and it all comes down to, when we're talking about the millennium, it comes down to the earthly reign of Jesus. So that might be something that we want to remember. Earthly reign of Jesus. So, we teach that Jesus is actually going to be on the earth and he is going to rule over the earth. Okay? That's what the millennium teaches. So the question is when is this going to happen, or is it going to happen at all? That's what these three seek to answer. And a premillennialist, like what we teach in here, teaches that the millennium, the earthly reign of Jesus, will, at the beginning of that millennium, Jesus is going to come and live on the earth. He will be here again. So when we talk about the second coming, okay, that's really what all this is the second coming of Jesus. He is going to do that before the millennium, and he'll be here for the 1,000 years. Of course, millennium means millah, is 1,000, and so that's where that word comes from. There's 1,000 years, and at the beginning of that, he's going to come and live on the earth. Okay? And prior to his coming, it is going to be the most cataclysmic time in all of history. What do we call that time? Tribulation. That's right. It's not a trick question. Yes. The thing that we've been talking about for like almost 2 years, that is that cataclysmic time. And right at the end of that, and before the millennium, here comes Jesus. Boom. And isn't that what we talked about in chapter 19? That he comes to earth, he engages in the Battle of Armageddon, he wins, and that ushers in the millennium. So you have had a front row seat. I shouldn't have to say a whole lot about premillennialism because it's what we've been talking about this whole time. Okay? Makes sense? We good so far? Post means after. That means after the time of the millennium, Jesus will come and be here on the earth. So you can say for 1,000 years, we have this millennium, and then Jesus comes and he plants himself after that 1,000 years is over with. Now, there are a few things about that we have to clarify. First of all, a postmillennialist will tell you that, and by the way, I'm speaking in general terms, because you might find somebody in one of these camps that looks at it a little bit different than what I'm saying, but generally speaking, I'm telling you what I'm telling you. They would say that 1,000 years, that the 1,000 years is not literal, that it is a figurative period of time. It's a long time, that it really just is pointing toward the time being complete. It's not necessarily 1,000 years. It might be 600 years. It might be 1,500 years. Who knows? It's just a time period that doesn't have a definite time stamp on it. It's just a general time frame. And so at the end of that general time frame, Jesus will come and he'll be here on the earth. Now the starkest difference is if we are in the millennium, okay? Something very important to read. Again, I guess I'm kind of showing that maybe I wasn't, oh gosh, I hope that everybody's been able to hear this okay. Let's put this over here. My apologies if you haven't heard of that, all of that as clearly as I wanted you to. So here's a key to this. Let's read chapter 20, first 2 verses. Then I saw an angel coming down from heaven, holding the key of the abyss and a great chain in his hand. Of course, chain speaks of, being detained. The abyss is a temporary place of punishment. It is not the eternal place of punishment. That's the lake of fire, which we will read about. In fact, I guess we read about that in chapter 19 and verse 20. And then we'll read about that. The devil is going to be thrown in there in verse 10 of chapter 20. But right now he's just going to be held in an abyss. And he laid hold of the dragon, the serpent of old, who is the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years. And he threw him into the abyss and shut it and sealed it over him so that he would no longer deceive the nations any longer until the 1,000 years were completed. After these things he must be released for a short time. Now, so that during that 1,000-year period, Jesus is going to rule. Satan is going to be bound so that he will not be deceiving. He will not be, in my mind, he won't be tempting. Now, a postmillennialist is going to look at the millennium and say Jesus isn't coming back until the end of the millennium. And they believe that, their teaching is that things on earth will move into a better and better state for 1,000 years leading up to Jesus coming back. and so that the millennium will really be ushered in by the church. The church will evangelize. The world will become more and more Christianized. And then at the end of that 1,000 years, as things are getting better and we're moving into a utopia kind of state, then Jesus is going to come and occupy his throne. Basically, his throne will be prepared for him, and then he'll come and occupy that throne. That's what a postmillennialist believes. And I'm not saying that there is no merit for that when you read the Bible, because they don't just like pull that out of a hat. They find certain portions in the Bible that they just read differently than we do. For instance, they would look at this passage and they would say that the book of Revelation isn't really a chronological story. It's not something that is unfolding. It's really kind of telling the story several different times from several different angles, and it's not chronological. So that even though this is in chapter 20, that's not necessarily when it falls into the grand story of God's kingdom. That's not how we've taught this as chronological, so that chapter 14 happens before chapter 20. Chapter 8 happens before chapter 14, and so on and so forth. So a postmillennialist is going to say, okay, it's not literal. Things will get better and better and better, and then Jesus will come. A few problems with that I see. That is that, first of all, I don't see things getting any better. Because a postmillennialist would say, we're living in the millennium now. Like, the church age is the millennium. And things are getting better and better, and when it finally gets to its best, God will come back. Well, I don't see things getting any better. I mean, do y'all? I don't see that. So, not only is there a problem if you read the Bible the way that we have read it, which is an historical approach to it. But I just look around and I don't see, it just doesn't make any sense to me. So let's see if there are any other things.
Do they believe that the devil's going to be thrown into the abyss? Do they believe that?
They would, well, yes. Those who believe the Bible would say that, yes. And so that's why I have a hard time grasping. I guess maybe I've never had a debate or whatever with a postmillennialist. I haven't with an I'll tell you about it in just a second. But postmillennialists, I don't know like exactly how they explain that away. So, other than to say it is not, it's symbolic, number one, and number two, it is not chronological. So, but again, if you read it non-chronologically, you can it can be just like, soup. You just stir it up, and whatever you want to bring out, you can put that at this point in time in history and throw that in that point in time in history, and none of it will make any sense. That just doesn't jive with me. I don't see why it would be that confusing. And so this particular line of reasoning, this particular theology or doctrinal stance, was actually very popular during the 18th and 19th century, the 1800s and 1900s. And the reason is because you had the Age of Enlightenment, you had the Industrial Revolution, you had all these breakthroughs in science, and there was just this optimism about life in the world, and it seemed like things were getting better. And so theologians would come along and they would read the room, they would read the world, and then they would read the Bible and they would say, see, these things are moving toward this, and so there must be a postmillennial. And in fact, if you've ever read St. Augustine, one of the probably the single greatest thinker in theologian in the history of Christianity, at least that became well known, he was a postmillennialist. So it's not that it has no merit to it, but it really came at times when things looked good in the world and it seemed like things were getting better and better and better. Then 1911 came along. What was 1911?
War.
World War I. And the devastation, and I'm telling you, that brought much, much darkness on the world to an extent that you and I probably can't comprehend unless we read a lot about it. It was really devastating because people thought, the whole world, but especially the United States entered into war thinking it was something that was heroic and almost glamorous. And then the realities of war hit, and it was really devastating to the psyche of really the entire world. And so there was this darkness, and then you had the sinful decadence of the 20s and all that, and then you had followed on the heels by the Great Depression of the 30s, World War II of the 40s, and it was just one devastating blow after devastating blow, and all of a sudden people said the world ain't getting any better. And it was in the midst of that premillennialism moved to the forefront. That said, well, things aren't getting any better. It can't be that. It must be this. But really, to me, the question is not how do we read the room, how do we read the world. That usually just gives proof to what the Bible teaches. To me, it's all that matters is what does the Bible teach us. And when we figure that out, everything else is going to fall into place. So you had postmillennialism that said the church is going to usher it in, things are going to get better, and they're going to keep improving, to utopia, and then Jesus, poof, he's here on the earth at the end of the millennium. That's postmillennialist. And then what's going to be difficult, I would say it's going to be difficult for me. It's not, because I'm not going to try to make a huge explanation, but amillennialism is very much like postmillennialism. They teach that we're in the millennium right now. Amillennialism, it doesn't necessarily teach that there isn't a millennium. It's like postmillennialism in that we're already in it. The church age is the millennium, and things are going to improve, and they're going to get as good as they get. But Jesus is never really coming back to earth. That's where the comes from, the not comes from. He's not really going to have an earthly reign. So, other than that, amillennialism and postmillennialism are pretty much the same thing. Now, I did have one time, I was going to use that a lot more, but decided not to. I did have an amillennialist once that was in my church, and he was a great guy. He believed the Bible, and it was really funny because we were talking one time, and in fact, I did a study on the Book of Revelation that he was a part of. That took a long time. It was in my last church, and we got to talking about it one time, and we got to chapter 20, and I did my study on the first part of chapter 20. We just read the 3 verses that we talked about. And he came up to me afterwards, and we were talking about it, and he said, yeah, chapter 20, verses 1 through 3 really kind of throws a monkey wrench into what I believe about the millennium. And that's true. If you read through chapter 20, just the first half of chapter 20, it is going to talk about a 1,000-year reign of Christ. It is going to use that 1,000 years 6 times. 1,000 years. 6 times. Actually, that might start back in chapter 19. I can't... actually, it might all be in chapter 20. 6 times it's going to talk about 1,000 years. Now, if he is just being symbolic about this, and he's just wanting to talk about why use a specific period of time, 6 years, if you don't mean a specific period of time. 1,000 years is 1,000 years. And if you take that anything less than literal, first of all, if you take it any less than literal, then you really have a hard time justifying that. But if you do take that 1,000 years literal, it really makes postmillennialism and amillennialism crumble. Because if you have a literal 1,000 years, and it is chronological, like what it sounds like, what it's presenting itself as in chapter 20, you can't believe those other two. You have to be consistent and accept premillennialism. And that is that Jesus will come to earth like he did in chapter 19. And at that point, when he defeats all of his enemies, as he does at the end of chapter 19 in the Battle of Armageddon, his reign will begin, and it will go for 1,000 years. And he will be unrivaled by Satan, because Satan will no longer be able to get to people to tempt them. I don't know how else to say it. I don't know how else to read it where it would make any sense at all. So, if you do, I would love to hear it. I mean, I'm not going to argue. I really want to hear, and I want to ask questions and those kinds of things and allow you to teach me. So, yeah. So we see there, getting back to the verses that we read, an angel is going to come down. Doesn't say who it is. It would make sense for it to be Michael, the archangel, the angel who the warrior angel, who has the strength to take him down, and he has the key to the abyss, that chain. He grabs hold of the dragon, and he's called the devil. He's called Satan. The devil is the one who is Diabolos. He is the one who is the great deceiver, the slanderer, the liar. He is the father of lies, as Jesus called him. It's what he's done from the beginning. The very first introduction that we have of him is as a serpent in Genesis chapter 3. And sure, what the first thing he does is lie. I mean, that's what all he does. And then Satan, of course, that's that's speaking of his I believe that means adversary. That's the word, adversary. So he binds him for 1,000 years, and he threw him into the abyss, sealed it over him, so that he would not deceive the nations any longer. He can't do what he normally does. He is, as always, he is nothing more than a pawn of God. He is always and forever at God's control. Whenever God wants to exercise control over him, he will. He is already a defeated foe. It's already decided. It's already done. In fact, my son asked me a great question just last week. He said something about the devil that brought in this discussion, that he doesn't have any power over God. And I remember what he asked. He said, so why does he keep doing this stuff? And does he realize that he is going to be defeated? And he certainly reads it here in this book. But something inside of him, because of his lust for power and to be God, he is going to, up until the end, he's going to do everything that he can to thwart God's plan and try to throw this plan off. But he will not succeed. He never has before. Now, there are times where he thinks that he will. Can you imagine when he's there and he looks at Jesus up on a cross, nailed to a cross, and he's like, done. Finally. Now I can do what I want to do. Only to find out that it was part of the plan all along. Can you imagine then in the future how when things are going to go haywire and he thinks that he's getting this taste of war and bloodshed and demonic presence being released and all that, can you imagine that he's getting his hopes up, thinking that finally I'm getting what I want, I'm finally going to overcome this, which is why he's going to do that last war up in heaven that we talked about a couple of chapters ago. He thinks there's something in his mind that triggers that he thinks, okay, maybe this time I can win. And but he'll find that he cannot. He is always under God's parameters of control. And it just so happens that in chapter 20 and verse 3, those parameters are going to grow very, very small. He will not have the run that he wants on earth. He will be cast into the abyss. The door will be closed. He will be locked, just like some of the demons are to this day, according to Jude verse 3, Jude verse 7, somewhere in that range. And yeah, he'll be locked away, and he won't be allowed to tempt or deceive the people who are on the earth for 1,000 years. Okay. Questions? If y'all have a question online, you can put those in the comment section. That'd be great. Any question about Revelation chapter 20, or if there were any questions about postmillennialism, or comments about it, you can put those in the comment section. What questions do y'all have in the room? So, once again, in quick summary, simply means that things are going to get worse and worse and worse. Jesus will step in, and he's going to bind Satan, and he'll rule on the earth for 1,000 years, unopposed. Okay, does that make sense? That's an easy way to say it. Post means it's going to get better and better and better until we hit utopia, and then he comes and takes the throne that was basically prepared for him all along. That's post. Means that things are going to get better and better and better, but he's never actually going to step foot on the earth again. Maybe I should have just said it that way from the beginning. I'd have taken up a lot less time. Anyway.
Been near as interesting.
Good. Okay. Well, there you have the recap. If any questions come up about chapter 20, any questions come up about the millennium, then I would like to hear about that. If you don't have time to put it in the comment section, I get that. You're welcome to call, email, whatever the case may be. I'll do my best to answer that.
You know, during these 1,000 years, these people who denied there is a Christ, some of them still be living on earth.
Say that again now.
Some of
Sorry.
the people who did not Christ,
And don't believe in it, they'll still be on earth, I guess, when Jesus is ruling,
Okay.
maybe.
Not really.
No?
Okay, so the question on the table is, people who have denied Christ will still be on the earth during the millennium. So let me, okay, so
where will they be?
remember during the time of the tribulation, everybody is going to be marked one way or the other. They are going to take the mark of the beast, or they are going to be marked with the mark of God. We saw that a few different times in our study, and we made note of that. So there's going to be clear markings. And those who took the mark of the beast, we saw at the end of chapter 19 that those people who have opposed God, who have denied him, although there really won't be a whole lot of denying by the time you get to this point, they will be defeated in the Battle of Armageddon, and they will be destroyed.
Yeah, I see it now.
Okay?
The rest were killed, it said.
Yes, that is correct. They were killed. Okay? So, we've established that. So what is going to happen then, let me put this in layman's terms. What is going to happen is when the millennium begins, the only people who will be on earth to populate the earth will be those who believed in him. And so for 1,000 years, you are going to have Jesus unopposed. But that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody during those 1,000 years are going to be worshipers or who are going to, be fully devoted, what we call fully functioning followers. They're not necessarily going to be fully functioning followers. They just won't have been tempted to do anything else. Now, what we're going to see next week, what we're going to see is Satan is going to be released from the abyss. Well, we saw it tonight. He gave a preview of it tonight in verse 3, where he says he'll be released for a short period of time. And during that short period of time, he's going to deceive. He's going to do his best to tempt those who didn't have any temptation for those 1,000 years. He's going to tempt them to rebel against Jesus, and he's going to be successful with a lot of them. And then there's going to be another battle, and then the end will take place. So basically, the start of the millennium is going to be probably the best time on earth ever, because all those people will be followers of Jesus, but they will have offspring who simply aren't tempted. They are innocent, not perfect. Innocent just means they hadn't been tested, but when they're tested, a lot of them are going to fail. So we'll see that. Does that make sense? All right. Okay. All right. What prayer requests do you have? Any prayer requests tonight?
I praise.
All right. Good.
Nephew's cardiac cath was not as bad as they thought it was going to be.
Okay.
So they did not have to do an intervention.
Okay. So
Jerry.
your nephew's cath was not as bad as they thought it was going to be. So good. That is good. I mentioned last week my friend Kevin Exley, who has they found cancer in his head and really kind of in the back of his tongue, but his neck. That chemo for him begins next week. I said last week it was going to begin today. It actually begins tomorrow. So I want to pray for him. I told him we would. I kind of met up with him today for a bit. Alan Burns, we talked about him last week. He'll be having triple bypass surgery this coming Monday. So, in fact, he mentioned that at the National Day of Prayer last Thursday. So I want to pray for him. What other requests do y'all have?
Joanne, with Simon, apparently he's not gonna make it tomorrow.
He's not going to make it? I did not know that. Or he does. He's going to make the appointment, isn't he, or no?
They're hoping they'll let him in the country. They don't know.
Yeah,
Oh, but the decision is being made tomorrow. Okay, yes. So yes, we mentioned that Sunday. Joanne's husband, whether or not he'll be able to make it from into our country from originally from Uganda, that decision will be made tomorrow, and so that has a lot of bearing on what her plans are with the baby and all that. So yeah, a lot rides on that tomorrow. So pray that God's will would be done.
Jay Donovan's family.
Gay Donovan has passed away, and so yeah, the funeral arrangements have been made. So have those been sent out yet? Did we send those out yet? We sent that out in an email, I think.
I don't think they're.
And when is, the viewing or any of that?
I don't have the details with me. I know that they are on Fox and Weeks' website. I know the obituary is there, and if Candace has not already sent out that obituary to our email list, she will be doing that tonight or tomorrow morning. So, arrangements to come if you do not know them yet. Any others? I don't see any prayer requests online. Okay, well, let's go to God in prayer. We are a little bit late, so let's go to God in prayer. God, thank you for the beauty of this day, and we thank you for the another chance to come together and open up your word and just study what's in there. There are a lot of complexities in it, but Lord, we do know that you will reign and that you will be victorious, that all things will come under your feet, and we thank you for that assurance. And it does give us assurance for the day-to-day here in this life, knowing that that what might take us under, what might be overwhelming for us, is not overwhelming for you. And so we cling to you and hold on to you, and may you be our hope and our anchor in a time of need, and teach us more and more about what it means to rely on you in those times. We thank you for your love for us, where you reveal yourself to us, speak to us through your word, where you allow us to converse with you and to have a daily moment-by-moment walk with you, and help us to take advantage of that, because you certainly put everything on the line to make that happen. And we just thank you for the love that brought that to pass. And we do pray for these situations that we have mentioned, so much sickness, so many circumstances that are beyond our control, and people who are just in need of a touch from you. And we come to you asking, because you told us to, you invited us to do that there would be healing where there is sickness, where you would that you would make a way where sometimes it seems like there is no way, as the song says, and God, even the things that are not mentioned, even the things that we hold private, they're still laid open and bare before you. And so may we have a sense of peace that comes from you, even in those things that we have not talked about tonight. Thank you, God, for loving us. Thank you for giving us a time together here this evening, and may we continue just to encourage one another day by day. And as your word says, even more so as we see this day approaching that we've been talking about for several years. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. Thank you all for hanging out with us. We will see y'all Sunday, if not sooner. Have a great rest of your